But the reason why I do it is when you're on such a large screen, when you're trying to find your mouse, as you see me doing so many times just now, it's very easy unconsciously to drag one clip out of place. Yeah? And after the session's been arranged, it may not necessarily spot to the same place where it was born. Or it will spot to where it was born, but that might not be where it is in the session. For an engineer, I think it's important for you to understand when the track comes from the first morning part of our session. I spoke a lot to the music producers as to how sessions are done, because it's basically to asking them to help us do their work better, faster, more. Because for me, when I see a session that is like this, it is a deal breaker. I may, I have my own studio at home. I may come home at 4 in the afternoon from my main job at Famous Studio, and I may be wanting to do some work at home. Yeah. And I'm charged up. Yeah, I'm going to mix this song. I open it up and I see this complete mess. So I start coloring it. I start labeling it. I start finding out what audio 1 duplicate 43 is. Then right at the end, I will find one thing that should have gone in the drum group. It's a major vibe killer for me. I'm not an engineer then. I'm playing goddamn detective. Trying to find out what was in the track, what was the intention, was this correct, is this correct, something seems missing here, this track is stereo but there's only one side playing, is it a mistake or did the guy pan it fully left, was it a mistake pan or was it intentional, right? So this is all this is what happens when I said I largely spend the first day only listening to the song with faders up. And again, to go back to the morning, the more the faders up mix, that is everything at unity or -4 or whatever you have, the more that is representative of what the composer had in mind as his final mix or listening mix, the easier it makes my job. So we spoke of song memory. Yeah, what am I doing? I am learning the song. I am not learning it whilst I'm mixing it. I am learning it so that by the time I get to mixing it, I can sing Shreya's parts. Vijay's already mixed this session. I've asked him to remove all auxes, all EQs, all automation, all everything. Yeah. But again, suppose the automation, like I spoke in the morning, suppose the session had been worked on by someone else. Say there were 80 tracks of program stuff that was given and then they tracked live stuff. I would assume that at the end of tracking live, everyone would sit to listen to it, right? And say, let's see if we need to do any more parts. At that point, usually the tracking engineer will have got some semblance of a balance going. Otherwise, you won't know what you're tracking. And if in his wisdom, he's put a clip up in clip gain, it's no biggie. Maybe it's a soft part. Maybe the music director at that point pointed out and said, listen man, that violin is too soft out there. Either we retrack it and you say, oh no, hang on a minute, I'll just gain it. And you say it's okay. So in any event, I am assuming that this session has been vetted from the start. Everyone has heard it, everyone is in agreement, all the parts are there and you've sent it now for mixing, right? So it's the same thing as the producer consigning reverbs or whatever. If he's printed it because he wants it a particular way, then why should I change it? My job is not to judge or reproduce it. My job is to mix it.
The other question is, would it make sense to duplicate playlists and then consolidate? Not at all.
Not at all. I'm going to get to that also very soon. Okay? Next thing we do is, all this stuff is now consolidated. I will get rid of this. Again, this is about freeing resources. You guys are lucky that you all are working in the world of Pro Tools 11 and 12 where everything really works. Yeah, in Pro Tools 6 and before, we had to literally fight with the machine. Everything was cause and effect. You add one plugin, suddenly 80% of your resources go. No one used Reverb 1 because you couldn't. Unless you had like all 3 HD cards and only 2 tracks. So, over the years, to be able to mix larger track counts, we've developed all kinds of tricks. Sub-mixing, fooling the machine, mixing and then bouncing. And we didn't have real-time bounce. We didn't have freeze. Just to make the session run. If you got a 24 or 40 track session with just mono files and you press play and your drive actually played it back without stopping once in 30 seconds, that was itself an achievement. Yeah, so maybe today resources are a lot, computers are hugely much more powerful. Yeah, I mean, you can see we just played 240 tracks raw from a bone stock laptop with no fancy drives, no extras, nothing on it. So as I was saying, we try and keep resources as fast as possible. And the higher your song's track counts, no matter how good your machine, you might have a new iMac Pro, but at some point you will reach the machine's limit, especially if you're mixing in the box. And sometimes you may not reach the machine's limit. There may be plugins with bad coding. It might be a bad version. It will start showing you errors even though the machine says there's enough power and enough RAM for it to run. Has happened many times. Many such errors in Pro Tools 8, Pro Tools 9 and even some versions of Pro Tools 10. Yeah, I don't know. For those of you who are historical buffs, you can download all the versions and see what version corrected what bug. Again, you're lucky that we are living now where in the subscription world we get updates every 2 months and 3 months to any problems there are. We had to wait a whole year or 2 years till the next version came out for any updates. So as a result of that, all the senior engineers who are working here have figured out ways to make Pro Tools run more efficiently. I'm sorry, I'm speaking Pro Tools here, so anyone who doesn't speak Pro Tools, please leave the room. Yeah? Just kidding. Same things apply to all system-based, and native systems today are hugely powerful. I'm working myself on a native system just now. I start inserting plugins. Okay, so since this was recorded live and it's all at unity gain, it is unfair to assume that this is the composer's balance or the engineer's balance. Yeah, I asked Vijay to just knock off all automation. So, unlike what you might get from a music producer generated by Logic or Cubase, this is a raw session where you're going to have to guess the balances. This is where if I had printed a rough mix or I had a rough mix as reference, it would help. And there is one in the session somewhere below, I think. Or is that in the other session?
The mix started.
Yeah, there is a mix, there's an IT. Okay. IT also brings me to something for the producers here. When you're sending a mix reference, yeah, always remember to send an instrumental reference without chorus or voices. Because the sad fact is in Hindi movies, the vocals are so loud and they make them so loud for your sync mix, for your shoot mix, and for your to make the producer happy mix that you forget to pull them down. And basically your reference mix tells me nothing because everything is just drowned out by the voice. So I can't make out all the finer nuances of the other 239 tracks in the session which are below that voice. So it's always important to give a reference int, how the producer would like the music mixed below the vocals. Any questions? I'm not going to keep asking any questions. Anytime anyone has a question, please immediately ask. Okay. I normally use the color red as a stopgap marker color. Finally, it comes onto the vocals, which I told you I mix last. So, red defines the boundaries of all our percussion with bass. Okay, 2, 1. In the interest of saving time, I am doing this only just now because we may not get time to finish this song. Right? Well, the concepts are there. I would do this whole everything I've done for the entire song. Yeah, drums would be clubbed, colored, guitars would be clubbed, colored, bass, keyboards, synths, effects, chorus, voices, string, everything would be clean, clubbed and kept. Okay, so at this stage, usually, how many of you mix with the mouse only, and how many of you mix with a control surface of any kind? Small, large, medium, anything. Okay, so usually if I'm being forced to make such a large number of tracks, yeah, there are two ways because mentally I can't comprehend so many tracks. To me, this is the rhythm track. This whole thing that you see, which is quite a lot of tracks, I think 40-ish. Yeah, so what I would do is, normally I put all of these into one VCA once I've done the any automation and balancing. Yeah, because on a control surface I can spill the VCA. Yeah, which means I have a VCA and then the tracks are hidden. They're there, they're active, but they're hidden. The VCA controls all the drums, right? Now, the advantage on a control surface like this one in front of you is I can touch a VCA track and just say spill. If I want to suddenly just adjust Dole 2 in the middle of work and I say, okay, Dole 2 is too soft, I need to adjust it 3 dB, whatever here. Okay, I can just hit spill. It will open up the whole contents of the VCA onto your console, onto the faders. You just touch, automate, shut, hit spill again, it collapses everything and you're back to seeing your one neat track. Alternatively, if I can't do this because resources are not allowing the system to play so many tracks together, I will bounce down the drum submix, or maybe bounce it down as 2 or 3 submixes. Maybe extreme low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency percussion. Okay. After that, generally I will not go back to the stems that make up those 4 stems, the individual tracks, because I have already automated it, unless there is a change requested by the music director or something. Again, same thing. It frees up the amount of information my brain is trying to process at the same time. Trying to process, looking at 240 tracks is not going to get you anywhere. Yeah, so ultimately we will have 4 tracks of drums, percussion, whatever that you can comprehend. And ultimately this will also help you to in a large extent when you're doing a song mix. It will make dumping of your stems for Dolby mixes and multi-channel mixes easier. So let's start with low drum. Are these live with you? Okay. It's very strange because Vijay and I were talking about, Vijay was talking about this to me over lunch, which I did mention I was going to speak about here. But for all of you who are working today, yeah, you are being paid to mix. Mix does not mean you have to do something. Yeah. Okay. Low drum, recorded in some fancy studio in LA, samples being polished to death, mastered, sold to you in some expensive $700 Spitfire audio sample pack. It's recorded nicely, put up, programmed well. Half of you may have just pirated the thing, cost you nothing. Right? So it's already polished to death. Yeah, unless it is getting in the way of something else that needs to be heard. Remember when I said about EQing to make spaces or panning to make spaces, right? You have to be brave enough to do nothing to a track. That is what you're being paid to do. As an engineer, that is your decision. You don't have to put 15 plugins on every track to justify the fact that you are doing your work. Yeah? I have done many mixes with 80 tracks where only 7 tracks have any plugins. Because the other 73 tracks were so well recorded or the samples were so flawless, I didn't feel that I needed to do something to it. And it's important to understand this. Yeah, when you're inserting plugins happily, nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging. Everyone has their own way. Yeah. But remember to occasionally bypass the plugins and just remember what the original sounded like before you started EQing it and compressing it and whacking it out. Because the more you do it in the mix stage, the less you're giving the mastering engineer to work with in terms of dynamics. Okay? Another thing, I'm sure all of you use Waves, Diamond or Mercury, right? all the plugin presets you use, please go through them. You must all have your favorites, whether it's on L1 or L3 or whatever, Q10 or whatever. Make sure your presets are gain matched. Okay? All the presets in most plugin companies are designed to impress the shit out of you. Yeah? So the moment you plug in the preset and the sound just jumps up, but actually most of that is a volume jump. It's not processing difference, it's a volume jump. If you play enough even with presets and save them again with your volume so that it is gain matched, that is, the volume is the same as it was with or without the processing. Start making it a habit. I think you will immediately get a greater grasp on what your plugins are doing to the audio. Because it sounds very impressive when you just open a preset and just boom, fattener. Immediately everything explodes from the speakers. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe the fattener is what that track needed. Yeah? But again, when you do things, gain match it. Your plugin chains also gain match so that when you bypass everything and you hear the raw track, you can actually then hear and decide what the plugins are doing, what the processing is doing, and how is it helping you. Is it actually aiding you, or it's just there because, hey, it's the first track I put up, I need to do something to it. Do we need to do something to this track? Yes, we do, but it will come at a later stage. Maybe. But right now, by itself, it sounds fine. Maybe when we put up another 30 tracks, you won't hear it and you say, hey, where did that track 1 low drum go? And then maybe we'll need to EQ something else to make this heard or raise the level or whatever. But what I'm saying is, don't instinctively react to what you're hearing as, oh, I need to do something to this. Be bold enough to do nothing. Again, I'm not advocating you all dance, put faders at 0 dB, say the mix is done and send it off to the client. Yeah? But over time and practice, I have a song here which I will play you later on, where I did the same thing. And it was a hard mistake to learn. I love the song. It was composed by Hitesh Sonic, and it was recorded and produced by Clinton. And I mixed the crap out of it. And then the next day, 3 of us heard it and we hated it because I had EQ'd, compressed, and basically fucked every track of the song up. It didn't sound anything like what it did. And then Hitesh just gently told me, do one thing, just bypass all the plugins and just play it again. And we did, and I was like, wow, it's perfect. So I've actually got that session. I don't have the actual session, but I have the stems because I wanted to tell you about this. Everyone does it. Nobody is above it. Experienced engineers do it. Engineers having a bad day do it. Engineers who are just shit bored do it. Engineers who are working on the clock and want to increase their hours do it. Yeah, so, but you're not helping the audio. That's the point.
No one pays by the clock.
Welcome, Vedu. Okay, so this is a new machine to me and I've not used Pro Tools a lot. Normally I have defaults. Hello. I have default. Can you everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have defaults on most of the common plugins I use. Defaults is not a preset. It's generally a starting point. It saves me having to move 8 knobs, 10 knobs. I generally tend to use EQ3 for almost everything. If it requires surgical work, I use EQ3. If it requires ultra surgical work where really tight cues and really large dips or cuts are required, then I use Massenburg's EQ. And otherwise, all the other EQs I use are for coloration or full textile, big bumps. I almost never do positive gains on these EQs. I'm going to create my user default right now. These are the frequencies that usually mess up my sound. You're welcome to take notes. It might not be true in your room. Most of this tends to come from actually my first proper console, which was a Euphonic CS2000. And these were the program center frequencies, and I generally find that they worked for most of the stuff I wanted to do. So I keep it like that, just doing it roughly. I feel like this kick has this hollow sounding edge to it in the low mid frequencies, which I'm going to notch a little bit. Okay. Again, same thing. Without the EQ, with the EQ. It just gives this lower kick little more presence. Okay? Okay. Anyone want to give me an opinion on these low rolls? Sure. Low mids up, it should sound good.
It should sound.
Remember what I said about gain matching? Yeah? Okay. So, couple of other important things that occurred to me, which I should talk to you about, and it went out of my head. So we'll continue, and I'll tell you again when it does occur to me. Uh, I'm sorry, some of these things I'm going to be telling you at random because I didn't come here with a flowchart or a plan as to what was going to happen. Yeah, because of the nature of this talk and the nature of the mixing that we were going to do. Yeah, so there are certain things that occurred to me and I made a note to talk about them, and as and when I remember them, I'll stop and talk about them. I don't use many auxiliary buses whilst mixing for a couple of reasons. I've seen people who make templates when they're mixing and like they open the session and they have delay vocal bus, delay this thing bus, whatever vocal bus, chorus bus. It's all there ready with their EQs, plugins, everything. Nothing wrong with that if you're working for a television show or a serial where there is a time crunch and you're dealing with the same music and the same characters every day. But what happens is when you work like that, you tend to get lazy. I have seen some advertising sessions from engineers which have the same Focusrite plugin on every track with the same EQ curve and the same compressor on every track with the same compression, and that session has taken 8 hours to mix. I don't understand why. Don't get, I mean, it is fine to have presets, but use presets, your own or the ones that come with the plugin, as a starting point. They are not, very rarely will they exactly fit what you want to do. And I tend not to use multi-busing for another reason. Remember we spoke about the nightmares that we had when we were working on Pro Tools 5 and 4 where there were no resources. You had to bus because if you tried to put the same EQ and same reverb and same compressor and same limiter on 4 tracks, your machine would cough, die and the hard disk would crash and finish. You didn't work for the next 4 days. Because only one guy could come and fix your system. Yeah? So, but now these machines are hugely powerful. I'm using a 5-year-old iMac at home. Yeah, it's a 2012, sorry, 6-year-old model. I have not yet managed to max it out in terms of power performance, even on 110, 100 track mixes, and even on in the box mixes. Before you say, but it's okay, you have so much analog processing. I have not managed to do it because the machines run fine. This machine I'm using is faster than the one I have in the studio, the laptop. So the thing is, if you put 20 tracks of chorus into one auxiliary bus and then you put EQ and then you put compression and whatever, you pan it around nicely, layer it out and all. But the thing is, there are males in... Gone. It's not gone. What's happening?
So actually becomes habitual to start putting on high pass filters and
So
low
that's
pass
what I
filters.
just said.
Yeah, exactly. So
I knew where you were coming from immediately.
yes.
Would you
Because
have,
otherwise someone your age shouldn't do that.
Yeah, I don't do that anymore. I used to though.
would you have used the high-pass filters though if it was not tracked by one of the most best tracking engineers in India, one of the most best acoustically good facilities in India? If it was
I
like
use whatever I would have to, regardless of who tracked it or where or whether what damn Quincy Jones tracked it even, if I felt I needed to. It's just like that. It's got nothing to do with who tracked it or where it was tracked or how superb the mic was or how expensive the signal part was. It's about what is right for this song in this circumstance. And on my feels. I may not be right, but that's what I see. After that, it's up to Vijay to tell me, no, I didn't do it like this, Ajay Atul liked it like that. You are wrong. So, or for Shantanu to say, that's not how we envisioned it being panned. But without having a sound field processor, actually, can't do too much with the sound. Any other questions?
What are your thoughts on mixing, EQing and balancing in mono?
Do you hear the world in mono? Does anyone hear the world in mono? Is TV broadcast in mono?
But a lot of people say that frequency overlapping is understood better when it's in mono.
I think, how many of you agree with him?
Bluetooth stuff is all mono.
even iPhone and phone.
Bluetooth is mono?
No, I didn't. The system.
I
that
thought
people
AVTP
usually-
was stereo 24-bit.
No. What I mean to say is usually the output is one speaker
Where?
on small Bluetooth devices or your phone output where people usually consume.
So okay, sorry. So you think that Yashraj spends so much money building a studio for Shantanu to track in with such superb mics and all, so that our lowest common denominator is because you're hearing it from a Bluetooth speaker. Then we should be all recording on iPads at 14-bit.
I don't mean it that way.
No, I know I'm fooling, but the point is when we are working, we are not shooting for the lowest common denominator. No.
Basically,
I don't really give a shit how it sounds on a
basically what
iPhone
Farhad
10.
needs to say, and how I would say it, we don't give a fuck about Bono.
Correct.
So,
Twice.
Twice.
One for each channel. And not all Bluetooth devices are mono. But yeah, I have, honestly, in all these years, despite being asked to, I have never done this mix for television, or this mix is for radio, or this mix is for CD, or this mix is for MP3 release or anything. The maximum I have done is I have done the conversion to MP3 or to what's the Apple format? AAC.
AAC.
Yeah, I'm certified by Apple to do that. I do the AAC conversion and give it so somebody else doesn't screw it up. I master my own mixes also, not because I think I'm a mastering engineer, but if it came to the choice of someone else squashing the shit out of my hard work versus my doing it myself, I'd rather do it myself. Same way.
So you usually avoid checking mono compatibility, or is that
I have never checked mono compatibility in my entire career.
Not even for facing issues.
Not even for phasing issue.
Just to clarify, when you're tracking, you're usually worried about phase issues when you're tracking.
Correct.
Yeah? So by the time you come to the mix stage, you can hear phase if there is or not. So you, whether it's in mono or stereo, you're going to hear it regardless. You know, which usually happens on reverb
That
returns.
will happen in stereo also. Not necessarily you have to go into.
And that usually happens with low grade reverb returns, where you can have phase issues, where people would think that is actually the sound of your effect, but it is a phase issue. And that phase issue might actually be good for what you want, because you use phasing sometimes in the raw sense of the word that you're using as a sonic idea or a map in your head. It's like how the Beatles used their ADRs, you know,
ADT.
80s. Exactly that way, for artificial double tracking.
Yes.
Major issue.
Okay. I always use EQ. I don't know about others. It's based on taste. Do you have your eggs first or you have your toast first? It depends. I may use 3 different EQs on a track, single track if I so want. I like I explained to you, I may be using this EQ for cuts because it's the first thing I reach for. I'm comfortable with it. I don't have to think. That's why it's there in my list. Yeah. After I've done all that, I might feel it's dull. But I prefer EQing things out, because what happens is when you're adding compression to stuff, yeah, compression tends to magnify. That's what it does, right? It condenses your thing and raises the level if you gain stage it, right? So then, again, remember I said that everything you do is a destructive process to the audio, at least as far as it's concerned. It's again all math. So I would rather cut 4 dB of EQ now and then put it through the compressor, then put the compressor first and then find out I have to cut 8 dB of EQ, because that thing has gone up if I put it on a 4:1 ratio, whatever artifact I was listening to. So like I said, when you're at the stage where small things make a big difference, that's the sweet spot. So as a rule, I EQ and then compress and then reverb and then limit if it needs limit. Okay, so you might want to ask that after all this is it, this is the EQ. Why is he doing this? There's so little EQ. Yeah? Anyone? One band, one little notch here, one little notch there. Surely he's hiding something from us. He doesn't want to show us his secret techniques. Any questions? Yes? No?
I'm definitely wondering it.
Yes, ask me.
No, I'm definitely wondering it because I remember I called in Shantanu on one of our mixes, Rock On. Without him, it would not have sounded the way it did for film. And we did some very aggressive EQs on that one. So yeah, I do have the question because
So
after Rock
let
On,
me answer his question as to why. Because to start off with, it was recorded really, really badly. So therefore, it had to have really, really aggressive EQs. That's the only reason why we had to use aggressive. But if it was recorded well, then that's Farhad's point of view. If it's all fine, you don't need to do anything.
And there is another.
And so my
I'm getting
second-
to the secret weapon source.
and so my subsequent question is, of course, many films have happened since then.
And they're still recording badly. Huh?
No. I am outnumbered by a number of music people in this room, so I shall maintain my peace and decorum. But
That's why I
question
said
still-
Mr. X and Mr. Y.
so the question still remains is, are we necessarily screwing around with raising a frequency gain on an EQ? That's always going to be a consistent question I have.
To who?
To myself, because
So then you don't do it. Why do you want to?
No, but you missed the first part of
Yes.
the mixing lecture.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we did.
Where I said that as an engineer, it is your job to be brave enough to not do anything. If you think it is already perfect,
Yeah.
don't do anything. And why I say brave enough not to do anything is because of this Indian thing कि यार उसने तो 2 घंटे में करके दे दिया, साले 50,000 चार्ज किया.
साले आप 50,000 चार्ज करते हो?
वही तो.
नहीं यार,
Sir,
थोड़ा बढ़ाओ रेट आपका.
मेरा बेटा तो ये तो उनके लैपटॉप पे कर सकता था. आपने मुझे बोला क्यों नहीं?
that's the thing, you're doing it on a laptop, right?
No, but my point to you is that you have to, with experience, learn to recognize that it doesn't need anything. Look at today's sample libraries. They are recorded in the finest of studios with the finest of musicians using the finest of mics, going through the finest of signal paths, and then put onto one polished CD-ROM, which you would pay $700 for, but most other guys would pirate and download. What can you do to that sample possibly that hasn't already been done? It's polished to death. If it's played correctly in context, you shouldn't have to do anything to it. Like I said, I am touching things where I'm making place for something else to fit. I am not doing it because per se there is something wrong with the sound. Necessarily. And unfortunately, though we had budgeted 10 hours or 8 hours for today's lecture, I still don't think we will even get halfway through the song. Okay, so the other reason that I don't EQ much, I will come to in a bit. Let's continue with the mix for what is worth. Understand once again, I'm applying the same caveat that we are not mixing today to achieve a result. We are mixing today to understand certain things, why I do the way I do. Display is really confusing. I keep looking up and looking behind. so watch carefully. I'm copying the EQ, but I will make changes on the copied EQ. First we go back to this one because I wasn't paying attention. It's clipping. Just so you know, okay, most of these things that I am notching out, audience, most of these things that I am notching out are actually being caused by mic proximity effects. Not because the mic is too close, but because the SPL of the holes is too much. So even if you're not close mic, you're getting a proximity effect. And if you notice, most of them are the diaphragm moving because there are overtones happening of the same frequency. Sorry, I'm shouting. I'm audible. Good. Okay, so now these are far mic and close mic. Yeah? If you notice this little roll off of HF in the ambience miking, so we add a tiny bit to just give it, what's the word? Feels. Okay, so now at this stage we have how many tracks of those? Oh, my bad. This needs to be copied here, and this needs to be copied here. I'm sorry that I'm not really mixing levels finely to show you guys, because I think the fundamentals of why I'm doing what I'm doing is more important than actually getting a mix. Yeah, and very frankly, I have not worked with a trackball and on-screen faders for a very long time. I just can't get the hang of it. I thought that this Pro Tools control software would work, but it's terrible. Okay, so let us now just assume that, say I've done my thing on these guys. Okay? I'm sorry, I'm just accelerating these things a little bit to the more obvious part. So I'm going to bounce this down and import it. You practice at 96? I'm going to be a little lazy. Normally I would color each bounce and each group that I bounce the same color. So if I had to go back to it, I'd know what I had. But we will call this low bounce. We will bounce all the tashas together. Again, if I had two HDX cards and the ability to handle 720 tracks, I would still do this. I'm doing it on a smaller system. This is not, in this case at least, it's not so much about the resource management on Pro Tools, but for my sanity, because I need to see the session a certain way. And when there are 40 tracks labeled Tasha, I'm only seeing Tasha.
So for those of us who are not Indians, what's a Tasha, right?
Vijay will feel this next question.
It's like a snare without the snares. It doesn't have skin at the bottom. It has skin only on top.
It's like a vessel.
It's that noisy instrument which we hear at all Ganpati festivals.
Correct.
And if that is being balanced inside the library, you have to plug your ears in and go. You might hear.
It's the only thing that can defeat any soundproofing known to man. Okay, so now before we bounce all these tones, yeah, I would like to do a little panning. Because remember we spoke that just because, even if it's just live or even if it's not, yeah, we want to get a little wider sound. Avid, just mathematically, let's say the closed holes would be 50-50. I'm a great fan of order in the universe, so we will never do 69-51. Okay?
Sometimes you would do just a 69, right?
That is outside the scope of my plugin. Right now. Okay? So, sorry, we digress. But, my So now if you hear this, okay, this closed hole has some sort of gate on it, because you can definitely hear the start stop, right? Okay, so if you hear these with the ambient, you can hear the low frequency filling the gap. The moment I put the closed holes up, right? That was the reason I put the reverb. So now before bouncing, we have to check that the reverb matches that. So it will be like, say, halfway between the ambience and the close miking. So it should sit in now a little better with the other two. how tired I am. You're only 17. I'm 51. Okay, so I'm not going to use special EQs, but I'm going to show you some of them. I love these very much. The recreations of the Abbey Road RS127 EQs. Listen to what happens to your stick. Two buttons. No thinking about it. There you see, now it has the presence. Okay, so we have our okay. Now my bad, I should have trimmed the tracks down before bouncing. I didn't pay attention to the meters. Remember I spoke about the meters? So quickest way to do this, logic people eat your heart out. Just group them and pull them down, say 4 dB.
I'm surprised that nobody has asked yet what is better, Pro Tools or Logic.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
what are some other ways you can get the CPU to get the project to working better in a bad computer space?
Don't use a bad computer. Well, this project would work even on an old computer because what I'm doing is I made the rest of the tracks inactive. So I think there were 110, 107 tracks on probably, and we are reducing it. No? That's the point I'm trying to make. The reduction also helps in your oversight of the project. Because like I remember I said that if I have 256 tracks and I suddenly think of something, that one dhol ka hit. By the time I found the dhol and the track which had that hit, I've forgotten what I wanted to do. So this, I may open out all the tracks again whilst mixing. If I have the power to do so in my computer, I may. But again, if everything sounds fine, I will never open out those sub cells again now. Because I am looking at the smaller picture. I have looked at all the minutiae of EQ here, this thing, panning. Now I have grouped it together. Now I will process the entire whole thing if I want to do more to it. That's where the secret plugins come.
One small trick I can tell you, you are not doing what Farhad sir is doing, like consolidating the entire track, because when you consolidate that, your playhead is reading each and every track every moment. What you also can do is you can make a region group so that it looks like a complete consolidated track, whereas it reads only the regions which behind the active regions are there.
See, now I learned something.
If it is Pro Tools, I really don't know how it is done in case of Logic or Nintendo, because I am a hardcore Pro Tools user for the last 18 years. What you can do is, instead of consolidating them, simply select the range, click on G, it becomes one region. It looks like a region, although the playhead is not reading the information.
Shift command G.
Just you can go
I've
into
never
the
used this feature. Yeah, but now with SSDs it doesn't matter. Before I used to strip every session down like into individual.
I'll tell you one thing why we've done this, exactly what Farhad said. That we have worked on a system where I used to get 64 tracks when I used to work on vocals version 4. So 64 tracks, of course, they are that time.
Okay, so coming back to the dhols. Okay, so right now I'm thinking there's maybe a little too much of the ambience dhols mixed in, and we need more upfront dhols, but we'll come back to that. I want to more importantly show you some other neat tricks. The reason why I'm not showing you too many fancy EQs is because I generally tend to use dynamics as EQs because I'm more interested in the kind of sound shaping that happens. For example, just like that black box, this is another one of my absolutely favorite plugins. Same sort of solution, different sound. I want to see the look on your face. But most importantly, and this is a very cool trick that the Waves CLA compressors also give you. Unfortunately, I don't have 2 copies, and that's on my main system, so I can't demonstrate that to you here. Is that you can just put the sound of the compressor on without any gain, at unity gain with 0 compression, and that's what I'm doing now with this one. Yeah. So we are going through what would in the hardware be the tube circuitry. Please don't ask me whether I'm not a cathode. Yeah, but it imparts an EQ flavor on it without actually any EQ on it. So maybe this might not be the right thing. Maybe we'll switch to that one or something. But that's now. Remember what I said about unity gain? Of course, it sounds very impressive because it's bloody loud. Same level, but it's alive now. So you understand what we are doing is, without using EQ, we are creating a vibe, a movement in the sound. Just hearing, see, Indian rhythm, dhols, tasha, whatever jokes we may make about every Ganpati, there is something very primal about it. It makes you want to move, regardless of whether you want to or you don't want to, right? It's the same thing with African tribal drums, it's the same thing with Indian tribal drums. These instruments want to make you move, but if they are sterile, they will not. And wanting to make you move is a very big motivation in mixing. That's why dance mix producers get big bucks. Essentially, what I've done is, I have taken the compression completely out of the circuit. Yeah, I'm just using input gain and output gain to drive it differently. I can change the tone completely. I can make drive the input gain and lower the output gain, and the vibe is different. I can increase output gain and lower the input gain, and the vibe is again different. You know why? Because the actual unit has different types of tubes on the output stage and input stage. So, a very good example of what I was saying in terms of matching EQ gains. It's very easy to put, a preset on where the input is at 4 and the output is at 4, and then you press play and wow! But is it better than this? That's flat. No, you can't make out. Of course it sounds better because it's louder. Yeah, but if you match it level wise, only then can you tell yes. Now is the difference that apparent? Yes, no. So then we should push it a little more for the input. See, immediately the bounce of the hits happens. I don't know how you guys see the sound, but right now it's flat. Yeah, it's like this. These are the sticks and these are the low ends. The moment you plug it in, the sticks just take a little step back and the transients of the big hits comes up. So, without using any compression or any EQ, we've created movement in the mix. Again, I'm going to add an EQ. Okay. This sounds superb, but the moment that Tasha comes in, there's mid-range mud in this. Notice that I had to do very little. I just immediately boosted it because of these 5 magic preset frequencies. Everything that is disturbing generally is within 100 hertz of each of these frequencies. For me, usually in my room or on my speakers or in my head. Any which way you want to look at it. Don't write it down. It might be different for your head. Yeah, but this makes work less fatiguing. Little things, if you can save time, save your setups. It's a little painful first time. Every time I update or I delete the folder, I have to clean my computer, I've got to go through all these user defaults and set them up again. So I never bloody remember to save them on a separate drive. But it's fun because next time I might do it somewhere differently. So now remember what I said about not wanting it clipping. Yeah? So to be safe, we'll add a 1 dB limiter. You notice that it clipped in the EQ. Now if you go back to the limiter, now the important thing is when you're using a limiter today, hello, people in the room. Yeah. When you're using a limiter today, yeah, you can use the limiter to make it loud and you can use the limiter to limit. Yeah, if you keep the ceiling at 0 dB, it's going to just make things loud, right? So if you want to use it just to limit, very gently, by rule of thumb, something like this. At 2 dB, it will limit and it will limit it by 1 dB. And it will also make the drums sound a little more alive. Now what's wrong? Remember that we lowered the doles by 4 dB because they were clipping, right? So you need to lower the bounces to get your original. I always have one of these plugged into my maestro because I'm always watching loudness levels. In our modern world now, it's more important to watch than watch. I mean, I'm not saying don't watch your peak metering. Watch your peak metering, but this metering gives a better story than peak metering. Because this meter has more relevance in the real world today with streaming services and everyone adding compression online to your master. Yeah, getting it in the right target will ensure that your music is as dynamic as you want it to be. Any higher or any lower, lower is fine because it will raise it with upward expansion. But doing it low higher means it will get clipped and actually sound smaller. You can't afford the hardware. This is usually on sale in November for like $30-40 again. Very useful to have. Buy only the stereo version if you work in stereo. You don't need to have the multi-channel version. Any questions, anyone? Fantastic. So you all understood everything. LR will not go because you have only 2 years and they can't make new earpods that will fit into 5 orifices of earpods. This is another one of my favorite EQs if you want to get a very high-end analog sound.
Vijay, I had one question. Like you said, there were 40 doles recorded in this session. So do we actually need that many? I mean, you get a louder, I mean, is everyone competing for the sound or what is it? Like 40 doles?
If you're thinking that it was about loudness, it wasn't.
Okay.
Because if you listen to that stereo track, which is downmix of, we used sound field and LR, so downmix of some 8 odd tracks. So that's not only the loudness, that gives you that room, space and width. It's about that. And what happens if you say that if you play 20 hands twice, it's about the playing. So 40 different people playing will definitely give you different sound, because it will not be evenly quantized. There will be some difference in playing, there will be some difference in pressure. Everything differs. And that is why we believe in tracking more than doing 10 doles 4 times. So we actually had 2 batches of 20 doles. That's how it is.
Sir, I have another question. When you are mixing and after some time, how you decide that now this mix is done, like from our side it is fine?
Now it's only.
Huh?
That's for you.
Oh, sorry, he was looking at you. So.
No, that's your
Sorry, I tuned out.
When you, how you decide that from your side that this mix is done, or yeah, this is good mix, or
There is something.
There are 3 things. One, you decide it's done when you get the check. Second, you decide it's done when you have tried every other possible combination the music director and the producer wanted and nothing else worked. So the final version is the done version. Or 3 is whiskey time. Otherwise it will never be done.
Actually, you need to know where to stop. Because if can go. There is no matter.
I was actually just going to come to that because I said I couldn't go on even though these are the first 3 tracks are bounces of 18 tracks of drums. Yeah, I can go on tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. And the point I'm making here is that you will get rapidly diminishing returns on your time. Yeah. If you mix 8 hours straight, like I am doing today and talking, you're an absolute idiot. I can't mix like that. For every 1 hour of listening, you should take about 10-15 minutes break. If you work 3 hours straight, you should take an hour off. I cannot mix without walking around, thinking about it. I don't smoke, so I go out. If I'm working at home, it's nice. I just go out, I watch some TV, I spend some time with my son. I check out Facebook, whatever. Anything distracting it away. Realistically, I don't think you can mix more than maximum. If pushing it, 8 hours a day would be pushing it. For all of you who are working 16-hour days mixing, it's a complete waste of your time. And you'll make everything that you might have done in the first 8 hours, you are slowly undoing in the next 8. And the worst thing is you don't know till you walk into the studio the next morning. And then you feel like, Arey, I spent 16 hours yesterday and I'm already now back to square one. Today I'll work 19 hours and finish this song. It's a downward spiral. That's why I'm saying diminishing returns.
It will be 8 hours on one track and 8 hours on another.
Count how many people are laughing in the audience, divide that by 4 and that's your answer. The ear doesn't care what track you're mixing. You can mix Michael Jackson in the first 8 hours and Lata Mangeshkar in the next. Still, ears are going to get tired. Oh, did you mean 8 hours on one track? Cool. So we shall continue. Okay, so you get the idea. So I'm going to go through this stuff a little faster now. Otherwise we will never get beyond the rhythm section today. Cool. Okay, so this is one of those irritating things where you got a musical percussive instrument that doesn't belong in the drum tracks. So we will move it down. John, you missed the whole session in the morning where we had all the rules for what the producer should do. John?
John's tracks are very organized.
Alright, thank you. Coming from Velan,
So I'm not actually going to EQ and do all that stuff on these tracks. Yeah? Because they are well recorded and we don't have time.
as in musical engineering.
And the orchestral bells too? Okay, so to save time, we're going to just assume I've done all this. Okay? Sorry, but otherwise we will only be doing percussion for today. Notice how much lower we've got to keep going because I was mixing my drums loud. Right, so same thing here again. Consolidate everything. Please ask questions whilst I'm doing all this mechanical donkey work. We've come a very long way. We've come a very long way with these sessions because as far as 3 years back, I remember still having to gate everything like this, bit by bit by bit. Now with SSDs and speed of machines today, okay. So what's the first thing you guys notice about the bass?
Program.
Yeah, that's there, but basically it has no movement compared to now. The drums are so primal and like wanting to make you move, and the bass is bringing it to pom pom. So. So now again, little important lesson here. Not everything you're going to try out is necessarily going to work. Yeah, I tried out a plugin which I normally like. I mean, the FG Mu is basically based on a hybrid between a Manly, Very Mu, and Fairchild in terms of its design as a plugin. And Fairchilds are very favorites of mine on bass, but it doesn't do anything for the sound. As in, it makes it brighter and cooler, but it's not adding vibe. So we'll try something else. So despite its extremely sophisticated controls, it's a very easy compressor to use. And probably amongst the best hardware compressors I've ever used. I love Elysia plugins, I love Elysia hardware. And let's play with it first and see, do a setup first and see. How many of you are familiar with this plugin? Okay, so one of the cool things it does is it's got a built-in tilt filter. Does everyone know what a tilt filter is? Silence. So what we're gonna do is parallel compress the bass. Unfortunately, this plugin doesn't have built-in parallel compression. Let's send it pre-fader. Anyone have any questions?
Trying to make it sound right. All the guitars are programmed. He's a player. He's a player.
Not be the outside of play. You also make it lined up at the back.
He's a player. Okay. Questions? Anyone? Anything? Same thing applies. Fancy sample piano, no need to do any EQ, compression, not doing it to save your time or mine. It's not required. Digital guitars, lots of work required. And this is the part where I was talking to you about the engineer being the producer. I have fundamentally changed the sound of what was programmed into something completely different. Now, this may be a point of contention depending on how well the engineer and producer, engineer and music producer, engineer and music director get along or not. Some guy may be, no, that's the way I programmed it, I wanted that. You please take all that shit you put on. Some guy may say, wow, you saved me like 40 grand from calling a guitar player. So, any questions?
Raja,
Yes.
how often do you gravitate towards using the audio suite? As in committing, let's say, an EQ to the track itself rather than putting it as an insert?
It's need based firstly. I was very often we are given for commercial work we are given shittily recorded dialogue from the set, which is now uh, becoming a practice because everyone thinks they have the tools, so the live sound guy records everything shittily, thinking that RX and whatever other plugins will save the day, and I have a CDR at home and blah blah blah. And then, of course, on the day when he's actually supposed to conform it to the EDL, he's on another shoot. So we have to do the dirty work. So at that time, yeah, I use destructive processing because it's just too taxing to have to run RX real time on everything. Plus, there are contiguous processes. It's not just one process. You may have to declip, decrackle, de-hiss, de-noise, de-spectral noise, all on one clip. If you're running 6 versions of RX6 Advanced, then the machine will die.
So mostly for restoration of audio.
Yeah, restoration tools, especially the plugins which really take, which have got very high latency, like those plugins only we prefer committing all the time. Why would EQ? Because EQ might have to change at the end stage of the mix also. Like if you are using deep breath on the voice, that is something which really has very high latency.
Right. So you could just
Normally commit those things on the restoration, all the restoration plugins.
And sometimes reverse.
Well, I have a question. You are mixing the rhythm section. You saw that it's really reaching to reduce that entire section. Whereas normally what I do is I like I pass it out into an aux section. So that's not a really very good idea to reduce the track after the processing. If some intensity of signal is going to the compressor, changing that intensity going into the compressor is not a good idea. So is it okay? What I do is I pull down all the tracks. If it's really loud section which has come up from the producer,
You should pull down your
all the
auxiliary.
tracks.
Pull down the auxiliary, not the same.
Even before I start, if I pull it down by 6 dB and start my work, is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that practice fine?
There are no rules. The thing is, when you are working with auxes, which was the reason why I said that today with a modern computer you have so much computing power that you don't need to use auxes. And not only that, it gives you so much creative power. I mean, if you're lazy, I could have bussed all these 4 guitars to one plugin and a little here and there. But having the power to be able to use 4 different plugins, why not? Each one suited to a particular kind of fake guitar sound to change it, to mix it up. Otherwise, everything will sound the same. But the important thing for this is when you're using auxiliaries with compression. Like I said, I use compression for EQ. It's not so much the compression, but the tone the compression gives to the thing. So what happens is a lot of that may be based on just IO levels with no ratios, 1:1. So then how hard you hit the compressor input change to get a current kind of sound. If you have an auxiliary and you lower your tracks by 4 dB, and then if you're using something like an LA2A or an LA3 or whatever, 1176 or something like that, it's not as simple as I'll raise the input gain in the compressor by 4 dB because there's no exact 4 dB setting. So that you have to be careful of. It's easier to either trim the compressor output or trim the auxiliary itself. That's why I prefer not to use that, and I use VCAs and the spills. Because if you have the compressor as an insert, nothing changes at whatever level your fader is coming down with the VCA. Does everyone here get VCA grouping, or do you want me to show you? There's only one person nodding here.
I think so. I use it. So
Show please. Show us the VCA.
First of all, understand this.
You know what is VCA? Public voltage controlled amplifier. I think everyone should at some point in life use an SSL console.
Actually, using an SSL console or some console, some kind of console like that, using a 2-inch tape recorder,
No,
using
they'll die.
that's really an experience. Cutting the tape, editing the song on the tape,
Completely die.
that is an experience. I really am thankful to God that I came into the industry on the crossover point of this and can use everything.
If you haven't spent time at 3 a.m. looking through the dustbin for bits of cut off tape, you haven't lived. Then you pull it out and you can't figure out first you tape it and you don't know if you put it backwards, forwards, upside down, backwards or not. So then again you have to unpeel the tape, again splice it, again put it together. That's why we always had a clean dustbin in the studio for discarded tape. Because you never knew whether at 3 in the morning the guy would say, listen, let's undo that edit. There's no undo button. There's a razor blade and sticking tape. And sometimes we used to do it across a multi-track. Not edit, actually cut out 2 tracks from the tape. You have to fit back those 2 tracks exactly so that it would play without any azimuth problem. None of you people know what azimuth problems are. Wonderful. Like I said, they'll die. Okay, so creating a VCA. Yeah? Let's just for fun, for demonstration's sake, pull this down. Say this was automation. Yeah? Say this was automation. Okay. So these are the guitar tracks. They are one group, as you can see here. Right. Deactivated the group. It's on. Yeah. Okay. So now we are in a group. Solos, mutes, everything is global. This is group 1. We will name it and call it guitar. Okay. You create a VCA master. Okay. Now see what happens when I move the VCA.
Okay,
It's not assigned, sorry. I've assigned this VCA to guitars. Okay. Whatever I do, the light blue lines, the entire group moves with its automation. Up or down. Yeah. Now what I can do is hide this. Yeah. And I wish I could switch on that console behind to show you how it works. But I have my guitars all available on this track to control on the mixer. Yeah. Sorry, I have hidden it and made it inactive. I should make it inactive. Just make active. Okay. So now this fader, one fader here, will be controlling the guitar. Let me get you to the next page. Right? So this is your VCA master for the guitar. Now on a control surface, you have a button called spill, which you might be able to find there. Yeah, so on the control surface, I can see on the 4 knobs, I can see the individual levels of the 4 guitars, 4 guitar tracks. Mr. Takase. So you can see better, right? So advantage of VCA is, unlike what I'm doing here just now, which is bouncing everything down, yeah, and making tracks, I can keep the tracks separate. And when I say spill, okay, on one side of the console and on any predefined section of a control surface, like the S6 or the D control or the D command, yeah, it will spill open. So the 4 tracks of the VCA will open up and I'll be able to see guitar 1, 2, 3, 4. I can adjust their relative levels if I want to make any changes. And it'll be consigned and I can say hide and be gone. And I have one fader controlling all the guitars with their relative automation. That's the important thing. Yeah, so here you have the guitar fader. I've hidden the guitars because now I don't want to see them. But if I say show guitars, show them. Yeah. Okay. When I move the VCA up or down, you will see all the faders move with their corresponding automation in trim mode. The blue line is showing it's trimmed. It's being trimmed by the VCA by how much. So the advantage here is rather than bounce it all down, it is playing, it is in the background, but it is not screwing up your view. Me, I don't like seeing just a line out there. I like seeing the waveform of the guitar. So I bounce it physically. And we don't have a control surface here. I've just got this for emergencies, but it's not very conducive to mixing like with real faders. So that's what a VCA does. Also, you can commit the VCA. So if I say I pull this entire group of guitars down by 12 dB, okay? If I want to delete this VCA, suppose I say delete, it will ask you, contains automation. Do you want to coalesce that automation to its group member? Yeah, so if, for example, I'll write some triangle automation here. Yeah. I've ridden the git. This is the guitar VCA. I've ridden it up and down, up and down. So let's actually go to that place and play. Okay, suppose this is some bullshit automation I've written. When I want to remove it, yeah, I can either say no group, in which case it won't do anything. It will remove the automation from the group. Or I can say back to guitar. And if I want to delete the VCA, suppose I wanted to automate 18 tracks together up and down. Yeah, rather than use a group, if I use a VCA, and then I can just write that VCA automation. So suppose I say delete for the VCA, yeah, and I say it says guitars content. You want to coalesce that automation to its group member. You say yes, yeah, it's written that automation. And notice that the clip that I had pulled down, the automation, even though it's triangular shape, is lower. It keeps the balance between the 4 relative to each other. Okay, so we've done this bit. I use a nomenclature generally of adding, either keeping it in caps or adding a capital BNC after the name, so I know it's a bounce track. Normally I'd keep these separately, but I'm bouncing them together just to make less visual clutter. Again, pointing out that this is not necessarily a normal way of working, okay? It again is very system dependent. If you have the luxury of a large Hackintosh with 6 slots in it and your boss buys you 4 HDX cards, You never have to bounce anything or commit anything again in your life.
So, how is summing different from creating a VCA? Like creating an automation on a VCA, how is it different from just summing those tracks and then doing an automation?
No
Summing
difference.
on what? Aux, right?
No difference.
No, not aux.
No difference.
Okay. The sum groups.
Okay. But now the method I have used, after 45 minutes, suppose Ajay Atul walk in and say, your balance is complete shit on the drums. This is not the way we wanted it. Please can we see it again? How many processes would I have to go through? I've submixed the dhols, I've submixed the big drums, I've submixed the high percussion. And then I've mixed all that down into another submix of the drums. I'd have to open up five submix into their parent tracks to do it. I'm doing this to show you quickly concepts of mixing, whether it is for efficiency or whether it is for overview. I don't know about you. I mean, whilst I love Mr. Tanuj's beautifully shared, by the way, template, I would never be able to work with so many things. I'd just go completely mad. But my inner OCD is very thrilled with it. It's all color coded and neatly labeled and correct. So the difference is, like I keep saying, I wish I had a control surface here so I could show you spills. You could understand how easy it is then to make changes, provided you have enough processing power. I am not doing this because of lack of processing power. I am doing this because of overview. It was fine when you had 24 tracks or 48 tracks to keep open to do a mix with a digital dash machine or a 24 track analog machine. But 200 tracks and 130 tracks means sometimes you can't see the trees for the forest. So this way we are able to focus on this stuff at a closer level. Anytime you want to end this and you're bored, please let me know. I can also go home and drink.
And essentially, there is no difference between freezing and bouncing for the processing power. Right? Like, what is there?
There is no difference. Freezing is more advantageous.
Yeah,
it is quick and unfreeze. Because we lost the VCA levels, completely up out. Okay, so of course it is a very shitty mix, as you have no doubt realized. But I did promise you that I wanted to show you concepts behind the mix rather than actually a mix. I'm not so interested in mixing it because that process would take me with this song at least a good 4 days. I would probably spend a day and a half on just the percussion. Yeah, so any questions so far? Any questions about techniques, plugins?
When would you start using compressors? Like, I saw that you did already this once, but how do you go about starting to think about compressors?
Sorry?
Like, how do
Nilesh,
you
stand up and speak up loud.
Yeah, so basically question is about compressors.
Yeah.
At what point in the mix do you start thinking about using compressors and what type of compression?
I use compressors all the time actually. It's just that in this song at least, so far we've not reached a point where I want to add compression because I wanted to explain certain techniques to you. Now, if you want to talk about compression and everybody is happy with what we've done so far in this song, I suggest we move to another song which has real guitars, drums and bass. Yes?
Sir, I have a question.
Of course.
This is, well, for example.
I'm sorry I deleted your low pass filter. I put it in there
That's
and
okay.
then I had
I don't do it all the
high
time.
pass.
I don't do it all the time. But I was told to do it during my study years.
Correct.
You know. Anyways, so my question is, for example, a lot of times with it, especially with like bass-heavy music and electronic music, you have these massive kicks that are peaking to literally 0 dB. Literally, you know, when you're getting it for a mix down. So my point is, for example, let's say a kick drum's peaking to -3 dB. Okay. But the girth of your track, the energy center, so to speak, is let's say around -18, right? There's a difference of, let's say, 6 to 10 decibels between the energy of the kick drum and the rest of the track, right? Now that is in some way going to affect how the track is going to be mastered as well, right? Because the headroom is being looped.
Everything affects everything.
Exactly. And of course, as soon as we start adding a lot of compression and processing to something like a kick drum, you start losing the punch in a way, right? Sometimes you tend to undercompress it or overcompress it, you know, and it's a very delicate mix, how to get the right kick drum sound, right?
If your kick drum has an 18 dB threshold over the rest of the music, it's hardly a delicate mix.
No, and I'm saying this because I actually got a mix a few weeks back where I was specifically told not to touch the faders. They were all at 0 because the producer said, this is the leveling I want, right? And according to that, the kick was shooting up really loudly, right? So my question is...
Was it clipping?
No, it wasn't clipping. It wasn't clipping at all.
Good producer.
Yeah, very good producer. Yeah. But my question is, in order to get that thump of the kick without compromising on the dynamics, would you recommend things like saturation and also side chaining? And like, what are the techniques that you...
I knew it would come up. Side
yes.
chaining.
Yes. So what are the techniques that you kind of go for, especially for electronic music and...
I have never faked a side chain in my life.
Right.
Never faked a side chain in my life. Do you use side chaining? I do.
Right.
Why do you need to use side chaining?
I mean,
what does it do?
Well, what it's doing is that, for example, if let's say you're side chaining a bass and a kick, a bass guitar and a kick, for example, right? So each time the kick
plays, your bass
starts compressing only on those transients. So the kick pops out more.
Big question for you. Does it ever happen in real life?
No, it doesn't. But how do you deal with?
my case.
No, but how do you deal with? I mean, for example, I can understand that doesn't happen in a live band scenario or a band mix. But when you are literally competing with productions that involve the very concept of side chaining, right?
If someone give you a thing where they're just asking you to put the faders at unity and not change the balance,
I was actually...
Damn it, just press bounce, take the money and go.
No, I did that. I did that. But
you were itching to turn the kick drum down.
Yes. Yeah. Because I knew that inevitably, if my job as a mix engineer is just to mix it, it would inevitably affect...
Were you here early in the morning?
I was
here. So this is when I said, you have to ask yourself the very important question. Who is signing the check?
Right.
Or you can take a stance and be starving. Up to you. It really depends. See, when it's a strange industry and it's not limited to just India. There's going to be a time in your life when you're the bug. There's going to be a time in your life when you're the windshield. You just have to take both. When you're the bug, you're going to be crushed and you're going to be made to do what the windshield wants. When you're the windshield, you can have your way with the bug. Okay?
Well, sir, I have a question.
Yes?
I'm not a producer or an engineer. I'm a vocalist.
You are?
I'm a vocalist, yes. So, I kind of noticed that you said that it took you a long time to get the vocal balance just right. So what is it about vocals? And I've noticed this even with when my vocals get mixed and stuff, that it's kind of like a tricky thing to.
No, I didn't say it took me a long time to get vocal balances right.
Oh, sorry.
It took me a long time to get this technique right.
Right, okay.
Because like I said, I am altering the dynamics of the singing, and that is a very dangerous thing to do when you're doing it destructively like that.
Okay.
That is a destructive thing I've done.
Right.
And then there are further processes which are relying on the destruction that I have done to get a certain sound.
Destructive because you were playing around with the wave itself?
Yes.
Okay.
But I find it gives me more control, and I have to use less processing on the vocal to get a result that I want.
उधळला समदबाई हातात नाही जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झुरला उधळला समदबाई हातात नाही उरला जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळलं किती नडलं जी केली ना मागना सरलं आताच बया बावरला.
Okay. So now you have a pretty nice vocal going. And you can also, this technique means you have less automation to do. When I say less automation, I mean you do block automation,
But not word wise.
but you are not doing swiggly. Until, of course, somebody comes in and says, I want that word. It's very important. Shoot में उसने ऐसा किया.
Shoot mix is the matchmaking.
जपून होत
Okay. Remember I said that I prefer to use individual processing rather than groups. Okay. You can do this both ways. I would suggest that you understand the spirit of what I'm saying rather than try and ape a technique. Not every technique will work on everything. Let's see what dynamic gives.
जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झुरला उधळला समदबाई हातात नाही उरला जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळलं किती नडलं जी केली ना मागना सरलं आताच बया बावरला.
Okay? So, rather than having a fully smeared sound with delays or automating delay sense, use a duck delay. A duck delay will only open up at the end of a sentence where there is space to actually hear the delay. So that's one way you can do it. Another way you can create nice delays is
जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झुरला उधळला समदबाई हातात नाही उरला जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळलं किती नडलं जी केली ना.
now use the feedback.
जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झुरला उधळला समदबाई हातात नाही उरला जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळलं किती नडलं जी केली ना मागना सरलं आताच बया
delay.
परन्हाई नजरला कळला किती नडला जिकिरीना मागना सरला आताच बया का बावरला
You just use reverb. It sounds vanilla.
परन्हाई नजरला कळला किती नडला जिकिरीना मागना सरला.
Again, in a case like this, balances. Balances are very important on how much feedback you have in the delay. What is your delay time? Sometimes short delays work better depending on your song's tempo. Sometimes longer delays. Sometimes 1/8 repeats. Sometimes not. Sometimes 1/4 repeat. But what it does is, unfortunately, I don't have some other reverbs I would like to have shown you, which do fantastic things to the voice. Adaptive verb is one. Yeah, where you can have delays and have the delays add tinkles to the voice, and of course you have
परन्हाई नजरला
you can change the characteristic.
परन्हाई परन्हाई नजरला कळला
You're hearing it by itself.
परन्हाई नजरला कळला किती नडला
So, see, the secret is you're using long reverbs and short delays, but the voice doesn't get mushed out. It's still in your face. It's intimate.
परन्हाई नजरला कळला किती नडला जिकिरीना मागना सरला आताच बया का बावरला खरंच बया का घाबरला.
We're approaching the end of our fun evening. Any questions?
I'll answer one question.
Of course. Tell me.
Yeah. So, like you've stacked two different types of delay on one auxiliary at the moment, right? Now, is it advisable for the sake of automation that we could separate the, let's say, the dynamic delay and the echo void?
Dynamic delay is bypass.
Oh, I thought
That was one delay I wanted to show you.
Oh, right. Okay. But obviously, if you have separate delays, we do it separately, right?
Why would you have separate delays? You have one delay that can do everything.
No, for example, what I like to do with vocals sometimes is to thicken the voice. I like to add a bit of slap back, a very short delay, just to thicken it up, and of course use a longer delay for effects, for spaces and things like that.
Let's try your technique.
We'll use two separate auxes and two delays.
Yes.
We'll use two delays stacked up. Yeah?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, but yeah, just one.
नजरला कळला किती नडला जिकिरीना.
Okay. So that's a slap back. Just thicken the voice.
You're talking about stacking and using two different auxes.
Yes, on two different songs.
No, signals. 100%.
So this one's stock.
Even he knows about it.
If you actually log in with the application support, you'll find it in the download section, because with the stock install, you don't get it. Once you log in with your iLock and your account, on the cloud. That's when you get all the extra.
And what other delay do we use?
So I generally use H delay.
I don't have waves on this machine.
But any stereo like panning.
Oh. No, that's too complicated. Other you blame my delay for saying, you blame my delay and say, ha, because you use this. That's why it is. How come I don't have the Avid delay?
Oh, mod delay.
Ah, that. There you go. What? Water note?
Project.
Yeah?
Project.
No. You get money. There's no chance of
मागना सरळ आताच बया का जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झरला उधळला का समजा
Sorry, slap back down.
Yes.
In balance.
जपून होत ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झरला उधळला का समजा बाई हातात नाही उरलं जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळलं किती नडला जी केली ना मागना सरळ आताच बया का
One question, sir.
Yes.
While we are having them on the saints on the auxiliary track, if you reduce the mix level, doesn't the main signal also come out because you reduce the mix?
The effect is happening on the copy, yes? The effect is happening on the copy of the vocal. Because the mix knob, when you're sending it by aux, and you're mixing it only 15-20%.
But you're sending zero, no?
Huh?
You're sending zero, right?
But again, you're tweaking the mix knob.
On the aux track.
On the aux track, you're tweaking the
dry
mix.
signal is passing through your aux track also.
Of course.
So that. But your ears are telling you that you like the balance. No?
Yeah. In that case, we'll have to, if we have shakes with your vocal.
And I'm confused. I trust my ears more than the eyes.
No, it's not about eyes. I'm talking about if you have locked with your level, and after tweaking the reverbs and delays, that will change. In that case, you will have to. You might have to
It
change.
It will not change if you don't include the auxiliary in the trim. Auxiliary return in the trim. If you pull, suppose you want to trim the whole mix down by 4 dB.
No,
it's
I'm
clipping
not
on your master. Suppose, right? As long as your auxiliary is not included in the trim, everything will stay the way it is. Correct.
And what I'm saying is, if I am locked with my vocal levels against the mix, and if I'm tweaking the reverbs and delays, and if I'm changing the mix level on the plugin, because it is sending it through the auxiliary, the dry amount will add into the level of the main track. In that case, we will have to modify that level. That's what I'm saying.
No. I am setting it up the way I want it. No, what you're hearing is a mixture of the dry track and the wet level on the auxiliary return.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I'm just saying that we will have to modify that.
It's the same thing. Either I can set it to 100% and then you have to play with your auxiliary level and bring it down minus 20 dB, or I leave it where it is and keep my
That's what I'm saying.
wet dry the way I want it. But I'm saying if you have to trim your entire mix or your vocal group or your vocal VCA, as long as the auxiliary return is not included in the trim group, it will be fine.
What you are saying is right. At the trim,
your balance will stay.
Your balance will change only if you are dry balance without the reverb. If you have set your voice against your mix, and then you are adding your reverbs.
But I wouldn't set my voice against the mix until I finish processing the voice.
Okay, that's the thing. Then
delay and reverb is part of the voice process.
After that, you will club both the things and then will reduce the level.
No. If you want to make things complicated, you can plug in another compressor, then you have to send the side chain signal, then you have to put that onto the delay and then do it.
This is actually really useful. Especially even VOs, and I've never come across that. Used it. Not used, but
So we used to automate.
yeah, that's
जपून होता ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झोरला उधळला का समजवाई हातात नाही उरलं जीव जडला पर नाही नजरला कळला किती नडला जी केली ना मागना सरलं
Nothing wrong with either technique, but personally I feel the dual delays smear up too much.
जपून होता ठेवला मन हे कधीच नाही झोरला उधळला का समजवाई हातात नाही उरलं जीव जडला पर नाही नजर
Yes, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? My whiskey awaits me.
Like the voice processing.
It takes a while. That's why I told you all from the start. It's not about the mix. It's about the concepts of how I look at it. I'm looking at it in a different way. You look at it and say, I need to EQ this. I look at it and say, I need it to sound a certain way. And the less EQ or compression you can use and get away with, unless there's a glaring problem, either in tracking or aesthetically in the song, the better it is. Which is why it's important to have great tracking. Okay, so anyone have any further questions on this? Vocal processing? Anything else? It's not a technical. I've been awake 11 hours. 12, 13 hours. In the evening, I playing that song I was telling you about, where my entire mix was bounced. There's another story associated with this song. Clinton recorded the vocals rough in his studio back then, just put in the mic like this with a cheap SM50. So it was supposed to be a guide vocal. And we tried all kinds of things. We got him to the studio, we set up fancy mics, preamps, we gave him whiskey to drink. Nothing came close to the guide vocal. So this is the guide vocal. So again, important. Sometimes, even if it's not technically perfect, performance, like I said, performance comes first, great recording comes second, great mixing comes third, great mastering comes last. Each one is diminishing return. Great mix is not going to save a shitty recording, a great master is not going to save a shitty mix. And none of the three is going to save a shitty performance.